Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I want to welcome you back to another edition of Facebook Live. If you're watching this live, it means you're a member of our Facebook private group. I will put a link to that group so you can become a member and watch these updated series. Also be sure to like my YouTube channel so that you can be caught into the release of these new videos. So this video today we're going to be talking about the benefit of dried urinary total cortisol and hormone test. That's called the Dutch test. So it's a lot easier to say Dutch test than dried urinary total cortisol and hormone test, but that's what it stands for. And a lot of people that are suffering with an exhaustion problem, a fatigue problem, a feeling burnt out problem, not being able to focus and concentrate problem, not handling the stressors the same way they used to, and they experience panic and overwhelm and heart racing and shortness of breath and standing up and feeling like you're gonna faint, or feeling like you got little butterflies in your stomach and it just becomes too much. And falling asleep, staying asleep, waking up energized, having focus and concentration and motivation for the next day. That's what we're really talking about. So what is the best way to figure out how that is impacting your body, or what's going on inside the body? Because many people that I consult with and talk to on the phone and really have a good finger on my pulse of what's going on with them, they're frustrated that they don't know how to speak to their doctor about what's going wrong with them without not being taken serious. Like, there's no such thing as adrenal fatigue. It's only an internet diagnosis. And when we do a ACTH stimulation test, we can see that your adrenals are responding. So you don't have adrenal insufficiency, so don't come to see me with an adrenal fatigue problem that doesn't exist. That's what's going on out there. And I even see what's going on out there where people do actually go to the doctor and don't even mention an adrenal fatigue problem. Just know, hey doc, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I'm burnt out, I don't handle stressors as well as I used to. I think something's going on with my hormonal system, my stress system, my endocrine system. Can you take a look? I think there may be some kind of stress response breakdown. If you were to go like that, even that would probably say, well, we did your blood tests and they were normal, and maybe you need to go see the psychiatrist, or maybe you need to go be put on some anti-anxiety medications or antidepressant medications, or maybe we need to go see a specialist even though your blood tests are normal. That's what's happening, and there needs to be a paradigm shift because it is a broken stress response system. And your brain is responsible for processing the stress response system. When your brain has a perception of stress, it causes a certain release of chemicals from the brain to release, which are released and stimulate your different glands that will produce a stress response. So upregulating your metabolism so that you have faster working cells to produce energy. Upregulating your inflammatory response, or breaking down and mobilizing stored energy so that you can use that for energy. Being able to mount a fight or flight response so that you do have an adrenaline surge and you can adapt and you can do a fight or flight mechanism. That's what's going on, and it's stimulating through the environment and through the different things that we experience on a day-to-day basis, and it causes the brain to release this naturally occurring stress response that should turn on and turn off, and turn on and turn off, and it should do that nicely. But today's day and age, we have so many things that cause it to turn on and turn off, from just not only the stressors from an emotional, psychological point of view, but also from just inflammation from the environment, from the foods that we're eating, from all the multitasks that we're doing, from the toxins, from the chemicals that are released. It's overwhelmingly bombarding to your system, which continually causes a stress response. It continually causes a stress response. And then when you put on top of that a decreased ability to utilize the nutrients that kind of aren't even there in the foods that you're eating, even if they're really great foods, and most 100% when they're in really crappy foods, you're not getting the proper concentration of nutrients and vitamins and minerals that you need to run the system that's constantly being turned on and turned off all day long. And then you go to the doctor and you say, I have all these problems and these symptoms, and your blood tests come back normal, and maybe they do an ACTH test to find out that that's normal. And now you got to put your responsibility into your own hands. So you go on the internet, you search for a lot of different things on what to do, and it's very confusing, because the deeper you go, the more you realize this person says that person says this, and I don't know who to believe anymore. The next thing you know, after that, you go to the store, you buy about 25 different supplements, and now you don't know which ones to take or not take. If you agree with that, let me see a lot of likes or thumbs up, because I'm hoping that I am speaking the language that you're hearing every day. So anyways, it comes down to what can we do to communicate to our doctor, or if we do take the work into our own hands, what tests are out there that we should be doing? And that's what I want to talk to you about today is the dried urinary total cortisol and hormone test. So what it is it's a test that looks at your circadian rhythm through different P's at different times of the day. So you pee first thing in the morning, 2 hours later, at dinner time, and at bedtime. And what's so nice about that is you wake up at different times than I wake up. And ultimately, some of the tests are preset. When it's a saliva test, it will say, okay, you got to do it between 6 and 8, then you got to do it between 11 and 1, and then 4 and 5, and then 10 to 12. With this particular test, number one, you could do it based on your schedule, your circadian schedule. Are you a third shift worker? Are you a second shift worker? Are you a first shift worker? What time do you get up? Take it at that time. 2 hours later, take it. Take it at dinner time. Is your dinner time at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock? What time's your dinner time? Take it, when you go to bed. So number one, that's already an advantage versus a blood test. Because if I go for a blood test, I can only go one time, or if I'm going to the lab several times through the day, it's not going to be, when I wake up and when I go to work, and it's got to be at the time that I have to get there. So it's a big difference. And that's really important when you're looking at hormone testing, because you want to make sure that you're taking into consideration that circadian rhythm. Because a lot of the times when you're taking a blood test, it may not be first thing in the morning when cortisol is high, and it also may be later in the day when cortisol is low, and you're not getting a true reflection. So that's one of the advantages, but we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. So you want to be able to look at the circadian rhythm, because cortisol release works on a circadian rhythm. And that's a really big aha moment that you should be having, because if they're going to assess your function of the cortisol production on a circadian rhythm, then if your circadian rhythm is not working properly, then potentially the way you test your hormones are not going to be working properly, and your hormones aren't going to be working properly. So there's a relationship between circadian rhythm and hormone production and output, and being able to mount a stress response. So that's why I really like the Dutch test. So what you basically do is you have a dipstick, you dip the test strip into the urine and take it out, and you're going to see different times of the day as to what your cortisol levels are doing. And that's really insightful for doctors that want to be able to look at that stress response system, the HPA axis, the different metabolites, and get a real good idea as to how are you mounting a stress response, so we don't have to tell you, yeah, your tests are normal and that you're crazy and there's nothing wrong with you. We can see a lot of things that are breaking down metabolically that we can fix and speak your language in terms of what you need to do. So the Dutch versus saliva, I'll tell you, I used to do a lot of saliva testing before the Dutch test came out, and we would see a lot of people that would have a high free fraction of the hormone. And of course, the doctor, which a lot of doctors are doing this, are saying you have high cortisol and you need to take phosphatidylserine. That's kind of like a knee-jerk reflex of doctors that are intending to do the right thing, but they're making mistakes when they do that. The reason that is because when you do a total urinary, Dutch, dried urinary total cortisol and hormone test, you can see that the metabolized portion of the cortisol, which is what you pee out during those times of the day that you take those readings and get an average of all of those, is representing from the night before when you had your last pee and dipped it in to the next morning 2 hours later. represents about 80-85% perhaps of your total hormone production for that time frame, versus the saliva that represents 1% that you just said was high, that you just concluded that everything else must be high based on that 1 to 5% range. Hey, you're high in this area, 1 to 5%, so your 95 to 99% is high too. And lo and behold, when you do a Dutch urinary total cortisol and hormone test, you find a lot of the times patients have that metabolized cortisol turned right down, and the HPA axis is shut down. There's been so much stress, so much inflammation, so much blood glucose dysregulation. All the things that stimulate that HPA axis has been going on for quite some time, that actually caused the adrenals to release a certain amount of cortisol. That got fed back to the brain. The brain said, hey, we got enough in here already. Tell the adrenals they don't need to release anymore, and you have an HPA axis dysfunction. Now, when you do an ACTH stimulation test, you will see the blood cortisol be low, but not lower than the range that it should be to be deemed insufficient. And when you tell the doctor, well, listen, it was low, I'm still tired, I'm still exhausted. Sorry, it's not lower than what it should be, and you're not really tired. But guess what? Your HPA axis is shutting down. You've had stress for quite some time. The H and the P is pituitary. What's going on with the pituitary? The pituitary regulates a lot of other hormones too. It regulates the releasing of your thyroid. It regulates the releasing of your reproductive tissues, progesterone and estrogen and testosterone, and it also regulates your sodium mineral concentration balance too. So now all of a sudden we could have some major downstream problems because of that HPA axis being shut down. So there's a whole new need when we talk about the truth about adrenal fatigue to redefine what's going on in the body. So anyways, with the saliva test was good, however, even though it only represents 1 to 5% of the total. What was really nice about it when you didn't have the dried urinary total cortisol and hormone test was it was the only thing that did it at different times of the day. Unless you went to the lab and you got your blood drawn at different times of the day. But it was a saliva test. It was very easy to do. You could do it at specific times, and it would give you a good reflection of that HPA axis where the cortisol is nice and high at nighttime, in the morning, and low at nighttime. And if there was anything that didn't look like that, we knew that was dysregulated, and that tells us a whole bunch of other things that are going on, like the hippocampus or the temporal lobe is not releasing the cortisol at the times that it should. It's a broken circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm's broken, then your gut repair processing is broken, your immune system is broken, your detoxification pathways are broken. Everything in your body is circadian rhythm based. So I'm going to say that when I talk about the truth about adrenal fatigue, I really think that we should define it in terms of a circadian rhythm disruption. It's what we should be calling it. But anyways, the saliva test was really good for that because in the beginning, that was the only test that did that. But when you do a dried urinary total cortisol and hormone test, you can see all the amount that's cleared. All the metabolites, and that doesn't just stand for the adrenal hormones. It also looks at the sex hormones and all the little metabolites. And when we say metabolites, all the little chemical models that are a little bit different because you've processed it mechanically a little differently. There's maybe a carbon missing from it or hydrogen missing from it. It looks similar, but it's not the same. The serum test is good. The serum test is where you're going to see the absolute amount that's bound to a protein, and that gives you some good values because if it's low, then potentially you have a problem, right? But unless it's lower than the lowest model, it's not told that it's potentially a problem. It's either black or white. The adrenal hormones, again, when you're looking at it from the urine, you're looking at much more metabolites. You're seeing it at different times of the day. Now, I'll tell you this. If you were to ask me which ones do I use all three. And here's why I do that. Because if I am a radiologist and I'm taking an x-ray and you said, okay, you have the ability to diagnose a fracture in that bone, which x-ray view do you want? And why does it have to be an option? Why can't I shoot one from you standing straight on? Why can't I do it from the side? And why can't I do it from an oblique? That way I can kind of visualize the entire circumference of the bone, and I could miss something that I might see on another view. Why wouldn't we do that with hormone testing, blood, urine, and saliva, and even hair? Because you can get a lot of different inferences on, hey, when I see that your free fraction that represents 1 to 5% is really high, but then I look at your metabolized and I see it's really low, maybe you don't have too much cortisol, and maybe I shouldn't be looking at doing something that lowers your cortisol when it's already low to begin with. Plus, why is your free fraction high? What's going on there? Potentially a hypothyroid problem, potentially a de-utilization problem because of inflammation and because of cell membrane problems. Lots of things going on that you can infer based on that dried urinary total cortisol and hormone test. So lastly, what about the 24-hour urine test? Oh, and let me just finish my my other analogy was, when you look at blood, when you look at urine, when you look at saliva, and even hair, you can see things that guide your treatment plan. I'll give you an example. Had a guy who was on testosterone replacement, and he was low on the blood test. He was super high on the urine test, and super high after a couple weeks after the actual injection was given. I could only imagine how high it would have been at the time when he first got it. But anyways, what's that telling me? Well, there's probably an inflammation process. It's not being utilized. It's peeing out. It has to be cleared through the liver, so lots of pressure on the liver. I wonder why he's got oily skin and acne. And also he doesn't feel good when he eats healthy, fats, because he's going ketogenic. I mean, it's time to put your thinking caps on. And it's time to not just dismiss it and say, sorry, there's nothing wrong with you. Go take an antidepressant. Anyways, so the Dutch test and the 24-hour urine testing, it's cumbersome because you got to bring that thing around with you the whole day. And while it may be good to get your metabolites, like all the things we talked about where all the things that go through you for the whole day is good, you shake that up and you don't just say, okay, I'm going to take some of the urine from 7 o'clock and a little bit from 8 o'clock and then 9 o'clock. It doesn't work that way. It's all mixed in there together, and you're not going to get the use of the circadian clock to see if it's disrupted. So I wanted to talk to you about that today. I want to answer your questions too. So hopefully that made a lot of sense. I don't know if we have any questions. So I see Nick, you're here. Hope you're doing well. And hi, Jenny. Hope you're well. Thanks for that little dialogue we had yesterday. I liked it, and it meant a lot. Lisa, hope you're doing well as well. And Cher. Now, Cher, you had a good question for me, so I'm going to answer that. So Cher wanted to know what the cure was for adrenal fatigue. And I told her that there is no cure. And I even made a video about that. And there isn't a cure, because the cure is to be 6 feet deep. I hate to say that, but it's true. And the cure is to not have stress in your life anymore. Wake up in the morning and be grateful you have stress, because those that don't. And so as long as you're going to have stressors, you are going to have an impact on your stress response system. But being able to perceive those stressors and how they're going to impact your body is the cure, is the verb for controlling your stress response. Keeping your microbiome healthy, supporting your secretions, being able to regulate your brain and your adrenals and your thyroid and your hormones to turn on and turn off properly is the cure. Being able to eat healthy nutrients that have a lot of vitamins and minerals and high quality sources of energy is the cure. Those are really the cure. So hopefully that made sense. So just wanted to summarize again what this was about. We were talking about the truth about adrenal fatigue is that one of the best tests out there, in my opinion, is the dried urinary total cortisol and hormone test, which is a 4-point test that looks at, or 5, because you could take that extra night sample, that looks at your hormones throughout the day. What's really nice about it is they have a plus now where you can do your cortisol awakening response, where within that first half hour to 45 minutes you should have a really huge spike or doubling of your cortisol levels. And what's nice about this is you take a saliva sample at 0, 30, 60 minutes after you wake up, whatever time that is, where other saliva sample tests tell you got to do it at this time. Even though if you don't wake up at that time, still got to do it at this time. So that's what's nice about this, because now you could start to see these circadian rhythms. But this lecture was about what the Dutch test does, how does it compare to saliva, how does it compare to blood, how does it compare to 24-hour urine, which one should I do? My suggestion is to do all three and work with someone who can interpret that for you. And then lastly, my suggestion was that there is a cure, in the sense that it's a verb. It comes down to the boring, healthy stuff, controlling your stress response, getting proper nutrients, and making sure that your body is running free of inflammation so that all your communicating signalers work effectively. Hope that was helpful. How does IF help adrenal fatigue? All right, or does it? Yes, it does. So IF, that's a great question, Stacy. So IF helps adrenal fatigue. You're looking at a broken circadian rhythm, which I talk about. And when you have time between the last meal and the first meal, that's would be an intermittent fasting period. That's the way our biology of 2.5 million years has engineered us to be able to run this machinery, to be able to cleanse the machinery, to be able to do janitorial repairs with the machinery, to be able to be synchronized to the circadian clock of the earth. Because when we're not eating in those windows, you're resetting those circadian cues to let your body know that there's something going on besides besides the actual timing of what's going on. Meaning, over those courses of millennia, we've learned to regulate our circadian rhythm and control the functions based on the circadian rhythm. Lots of work has gone into that. And so when we go ahead and eat multiple meals more frequently throughout whatever times of the day, it's against how our body's engineered to repair and regenerate itself. Also, when we have a broken circadian rhythm, we don't regulate glucose very well. And when glucose isn't regulated very well, then all of a sudden cortisol is not going to be regulated very well. So lots goes into that, Stacy. I hope that was helpful for you, and I'm looking forward to talking to you soon. So anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. My name is Dr. Joel Rosen, the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I look forward to ending your adrenal fatigue nightmare. Thank you so much.